In this lecture, we're going to be talking about the beginnings of World War I, or what was called the Great War at the time, 1914 to 1918. Very pivotal years. I cannot understate the significance of this war. Most people know about World War II, or they think they know about World War II, and World War I is a little, it's not, as known, and some of the aspects of it are not as known. So let's just kind of explore a background of some things going on. And I wanted to start off by actually discussing a theory of war, because if you look at World War I, if you look even in the book, it's so confusing as to what is going on. And so I'd like you to kind of think more about the broader context of the implications of it than all the details exactly of the nations fighting nations. So Karl von Clausewitz had a theory on war, and he said that war is a continuation of politics by other means, right? I've heard this before. And one Anatole Rappaport's analysis breaks down it this way, that the state has well-defined strivings and goals, in politics. The state recognizes no authority above itself. The goal of all states is to increase their power at the expense of other states, hence always conflicting. Clashes of interests resolved by the imposition of the will of one state on another. That's how it's resolved. War is a normal phase in the relations among states. This is his breakdown of Clausewitz, and it's a very, grim analysis, but I think it's fair to say. And if we think about the idea that all states, including the United States, is a state with certain types of interests that cannot inherently coexist with, let's say, opposing interests of another state, then what is done to resolve this? War or kind of an imperial push by another state. This would be kind of what Clausewitz is pointing out. And this is, you look at the way that European nation states were developing militarily, there were certain interests overlapping and leading into this. So anyhow, how was the peace kept before? Well, it's too short of a time for me to give to a very important character, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. On your own time, it'd be really good just to kind of study on him if you really take an interest in politics and certain characters who are important. Just to say that in the diplomatic revolution that he had of 1890 to 1907, he created a triple alliance, Austria, Italy, Germany, and a defense pact. And he made a reassurance treaty with Russia over the Balkans and the opposition to any as the aggressor. And he kept France isolated. This is kind of, if this seems too complicated, just think about it this way. This was a guy who was able to play off the powers that we were talking about of opposing interests. And he was able to keep everything kind of just so pinned down. But through this diplomacy, so there was peace with, water boiling underneath in the pot, so to speak, okay? So what happens? William II, Kaiser of Imperial Germany, or Caesar, right, of Imperial Germany, he reversed Bismarck's diplomacy, and then the Kaiser dismissed him, and he did not renew the treaties. And then there was a naval arms race with Britain. And so basically, maybe at the time it wasn't so clear if Bismarck's diplomacy was what was really working or the right answer. But many would argue that it was. And so a crisis ensues. 1908 to 1903. You had the Triple Entente of Britain, France, Russia to offset the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. We had a crisis in Bosnia. Again, certain areas that other powers were fighting over. Italy took Tripoli from Ottoman Empire, and then the Balkan nations drive out the Ottomans. So, again, what I'm kind of pointing out is that Europe is starting to fall into chaos and war. I mean, now we think of like, oh, the Middle East is kind of like, oh, they're always just fighting and killing each other. But, Europeans have been going back and forth, tit for tat, for quite some time. I think if you've noticed in this class. Now, what ends up happening is a very significant event: the Crisis of July 1914. June 28, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, was assassinated in Sarajevo, parading around newly conquered territory by a Bosnian nationalist, Gavrilo Princip. And this circumstance actually helped set off the war. I'm not going to actually totally explain all of that here, just to say that really complex piece was just undermined. Austria declares war on Serbia, and then basically all hell breaks loose. So again, you'll look in your book and you can see more of the details behind that. Now, here's a map kind of showing all of the of what's going on here in terms of colonies that are also incorporated into these alliances and the Entente. And it's kind of complicated, but you can see there's a lot of hot spots right here. And so military capabilities are matched. All nations expected to win quickly. This is such a trademark. I remember when, Bush, if anybody remembers his victory coming out on the airplane, what did he say? Basically, the war just started in Iraq, and he was pretty much saying, hey, we did this. Mission accomplished, I think, was what was the big sign he had. They expected this to go quick. None expected the war to do what it was going to do. And there was a lot of positive feedback for this war to happen. Now, why is that and what's going on? I will talk about that more in the next lecture.